The book of Exodus begins with the Israelites in bondage under Pharaoh's rule. Their oppression includes forced labor and harsh treatment for many generations until a Hebrew man by the name of Moshe, you may know him as Moses, was raised in Pharaoh's house as a prince of Egypt and became an oracle of the Hebrew God Yahweh. At the time that baby Moses was born, the Pharaoh had a decree to kill all male infant Hebrews. His parents, Amram and Jochebed, had to hide him. After a few months, this became almost impossible. What they did was, they put baby Moses in a waterproof basket and floated him up the river that Pharaoh's daughter was known to bathe in. Now, typically, this is a motif or a trope that we see in a lot of ancient heroes and figures. Moses is no exception. Moses was discovered by Pharaoh's daughter while she was bathing in the river. She decided to raise him as her own, and he grew up in the palace of Egypt. Despite his royal upbringing, Moses was somehow aware of his Hebrew heritage. This becomes evident because later in life, Moses witnessed an Egyptian taskmaster mistreating a Hebrew slave. He intervened and killed the Egyptian. And fearing for his life, Moses fled to Midian, where he encountered Jethro's family and eventually married Jethro's daughter, Zipporah. During this time, Moses encounters Yahweh at the burning bush, where he is told to return to Egypt and lead the Israelites to freedom. And that is exactly what Moses does. He heads back to Egypt, he enlists the help of his brother Aaron, then he confronts Pharaoh. Accompanied by his brother Aaron, Moses went before Pharaoh and delivered Yahweh's message, "Let my people go." He explained that God wanted the Israelites who had been enslaved and oppressed for generations to be set free and worship him in the wilderness. Pharaoh quickly refuses. Moses then warns him about the 10 coming plagues that will devastate the entire land of Egypt. Here, my friends, is where I finally get to introduce the Destroyer. As a part of the 10 plagues, in Exodus 12 verse 23, this being is called Mashketh. In Hebrew, it means ruin or destruction. Here in Exodus, though, this is the being that's bringing the destruction, the Destroyer. Also, this is the actual origin story of the Passover. These plagues are primarily depicted as divine punishment and a demonstration of Yahweh's power. However, some interpretations suggest that these plagues also served as a challenge to the Egyptian gods, as each of the plagues seemed to target a specific aspect of nature or life that the Egyptians held sacred. For the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he sees the blood upon the lintel and on the 2 side posts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not suffer the Destroyer to come in unto your houses to smite you. The Destroyer, signifying the agent of the divine judgment. In Psalm 78, the psalmist here refers back to when the Israelites provoked Yahweh in the wilderness. And in verse 42, he says, "They remembered not his hand, nor the day when he delivered them from the enemy, how he wrought his signs in Egypt, and his wonders in the field of Zoan. Turned their rivers to blood, their streams. He sent flies and frogs, caterpillars and locusts. He destroyed their vineyards and their sycamore trees, their cattle and their flocks. But in verse 49 it says, "He casts upon them the fierceness of his anger, wrath and indignation and trouble, by sending evil angels among them, and smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt." Evil angels, plural. In some translations, it says a band of destroying angels. Why would later tradition say that this is no longer just a destroying angel, the agent of Yahweh, but a band of them, a group, a company? Is that what Mashkith means? A company of them, like legion? Well, first, we have to understand their worldview that's going on at this time. That's why the Exodus is very important. It's important for many different reasons. And I think it actually happened to some degree. And I'm going to get into that later. I'm going to tell you something very important, but some of you may need to take a deep breath here first. The Hebrews, especially in the ancient world, like everybody else, were polytheistic, meaning they either worshipped a pantheon of gods or at least thought of the universe being governed or ran in some sort of fashion by multiple beings and forces we call gods. The main god, the prime deity in the land of Canaan, was El, E-L. El was the supreme god in the Canaanite and Phoenician pantheons, often referred to as the father of the gods, and held a position of authority and power. He was associated with wisdom, fertility, and creation, often depicted as a bearded old man. El was considered to be the father of numerous gods and goddesses, including Baal, the storm god, and Anat, the warrior goddess. In my personal opinion, I think Yahweh may fall under this umbrella. He was seen as the ruler of the cosmos and the one who maintained order and justice among the gods and humans. He was believed to have control over the natural world and its fertility. He was worshipped in the ancient Near East, particularly in the city of Ugarit, in modern-day Syria. El's mythology and attributes influenced the development of other deities in the region. He is often associated with similar deities in neighboring cultures, such as the Sumerian god Anu and the Akkadian god Enlil. Elements of the Canaanite and Phoenician religion, including the worship of El, had a significant impact on the development of monotheistic traditions, including Judaism. In the Hebrew Bible, El is sometimes referred to as Elohim and is considered a name for the God of Israel. And right there, you have the foundation of the divine council. You have El, the God on high, the king. He has his sons and daughters, Baal and the goddesses, his royal family. And then he's got agents, officers, and officials that go out and do his bidding. That is the blueprint for the divine council. What I'm still trying to wrap my mind around, though, in the book of Exodus, it says the destroyer. The destroyer will go in and smite the Egyptians, killed all the firstborn. Later on, the psalmist says it was a band, a company, a legion of evil angels. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Give me some insight. Fun fact: in Christian tradition, Jesus was said to have been crucified on Passover, right? Throwing it in the Jews' face that, hey, you really messed up. But not only that, on the cross, what did Jesus say? He didn't say Yahweh. He said, what I'm trying to get across is, from the times of the Exodus, on through the Second Temple era, on through the Christian era, theologically, I don't think there's an argument about monotheism, about there being one true God, one supreme being that rules over all. I think they are butting heads over who that is exactly. There's a huge difference. Let's think about it this way. Would the supreme deity send in a holy and righteous angel into the land of Egypt to carry out this terrible act of, I wouldn't call it justice, but to carry out this punishment and kill all these innocent, the firstborn sons in all of Egypt? Or would a deity sit back and look and say, there's these angels over here that are already evil. The evil already exists within them, and I can use them over here in Egypt to carry out this terrible punishment that I need and use it to my advantage. It's just something to think about. I want to take us back to Moses and the Exodus and why I believe that this could have possibly happened. Moses is considered one of the greatest prophets in Judaism. According to the Hebrew Bible, he had direct communication with God and received the Torah. Moses received revelation from the supreme deity. This is something that changed the entire Western world. Not only was he claimed to have spoke and communicated with God, but he was also the leader of the Exodus. Now, if the timelines are correct, I want to show you how this liberation event from slavery out of Egypt that we call the Exodus could have possibly happened. The Hyksos were a group of foreign rulers who invaded Egypt and eventually established their rule in the northern part of the country, including parts of Canaan, the 17th century BCE. During the late Bronze Age collapse, the Sea Peoples, a group of maritime raiders, invaded and disrupted many coastal areas. Even then, you still had other invasions and conflicts like the Hittites and Assyrians. You had internal struggles during the intermediate period in Egypt. The central authority was weakened by internal conflicts and fragmentation. The Egyptian rulers were preoccupied with challenges in their homeland, which reduced their ability to maintain control over their foreign territories, including Canaan. Whether the Hebrews were already in Canaan, just under Egyptian rule, or they were enslaved within the land of Egypt, like the text says, right there is your timeline. Some Christians in the past have accused me of trying to lead people astray from their faith, but that simply is not true. I do, however, think you need to look at these texts critically, understanding their culture and customs, their language, their history, and make an informed decision on what you believe. During the Bronze Age collapse, there was a lot going on in the Middle East and the Mediterranean area that could have allowed this to happen. There's a lot of Egyptian flavor too within these texts and within the culture of the ancient Hebrews. So it leads me to believe that they were under Egyptian rule at some point in time, and they believed by the grace of God they were able to get out from underneath of that. Not only that, I speak from experience, and I am not your enemy. I am more with you than against you. I want you to see this YouTube channel as a place for discussion and common topics. I grew up going to church. My mom took us to church, the Assembly of God. And I grew up hanging on every single word that the Bible says in its entirety. I had my own way of rationalizing certain things, like we all do as Bible believers, but I really want you to know from the bottom of my heart, I'm not against you. In a way, I'm still spiritual. I still believe that there are governing forces of the universe, whether they be like just natural forces or something spiritual. I'm with you. I'm in your camp, I would say. Please, if you would, still support this channel. Hit the like button, hit the sub button. Let's have a discussion. Write it down in the comments. Let me know what you think. Maybe there's something I don't know. I'm still learning. I've been looking into this book for 20 plus years, and I still don't have it all figured out. That's why I pretty much created this channel here. I'm not driving my family crazy anymore with topics they don't care about. I can talk about it here. Exodus 3 is an example of binatarian thinking, binatarian thought, meaning equal divinity of a secondary force or forces. And the angel of the Lord appeared to Moses in the flame out of the midst of a bush. Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this. And when Yahweh saw that he turned aside to see, Elohim called unto him out of the midst of the bush. The angel of Yahweh, Yahweh, and Elohim. And then in Exodus 6, the author wants to make it clear to you that the patriarchs worshipped Yahweh. Elohim spoke to Moses and said, I am Yahweh. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty, El Shaddai, but my name Yahweh, I did not make it known to them. This is why I would suggest you look at these texts critically if you're a believer. The author of Exodus is saying, no, Yahweh's not a new God. He's the same God that walked with Abraham, the same God that wrestled with Jacob, Israel. But they didn't know his name. He's revealing it now to Moses. The only word that comes to my mind is development. You remember El, the god from the Canaanite pantheon, right? There would be no other reason for the author or the authors of Exodus to put this in there, that was Yahweh that walked with Abraham and wrestled with Jacob, unless there was discussions already being had, some sort of controversy over who the Most High God is. It was developed the same way that Christianity was. You kind of had Greek philosophy and Jewish tradition and thought infused. And they look back, especially the book of Exodus, and thought, ooh, I don't know if a holy and righteous God would slaughter a bunch of innocent children in Egypt. They developed this entire way of thinking the same way the writers here in Exodus are putting Yahweh as the Most High from the beginning of time. Now, the Hebrews had their reasons for this development. There were unsavory practices and rituals going on in Canaanite religions during those times, much like the sacrifice of children, the slaughter of innocents, just like in Exodus. Look how this has come back full circle. When Abraham was 99 years old, Yahweh appeared to him and said, I am El Shaddai. Now go before me and be holy. Now Genesis 19, very odd. And I want you to notice some connections here. You have angels, boots on the ground. Remember, Lot even offered up his own daughter so the men wouldn't do whatever to the angels. And you can't tell me that there wasn't any children in either one of these cities. But Yahweh rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from Yahweh out of heaven. Now, I know the Hebrews did this from time to time poetically. They would say the same thing again, but in a different way. But I'm almost wondering, was El Shaddai supposed to be there? Yahweh rained brimstone and fire from El Shaddai out of heaven, as Yahweh being the agent. Just a thought. The story of Jacob wrestling the angel. It leaves me with more questions than answers. And he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed." Jacob asked the angel, saying, "Tell me your name, I pray." And the angel said, "Why is it you ask about my name?" And he blessed him there. Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, literally, face of God. For I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. And if you didn't know, there's an ancient superstition about names. Specifically, knowing something's name gives you some sort of power over that being. We see that in writings like the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon, where knowing the demon's name gives him some kind of power. We also notice that with the 72 names of God. It's said to give you some sort of power, like in witchcraft or some kind of sorcery or divination with spiritual beings. So Jacob wrestled the angel and still lived. So the angel says, "Okay, I'll give you the blessing. Your name is no longer Jacob. It's Israel, Israel, for you have wrestled with God and men and prevailed." Jacob says, "Please tell me, what is your name?" The angel asks, "Why do you ask about my name?" Here's a thought: because he didn't know it, or simply just wanted to know the name of the God he was interacting with. That concludes this episode on the God of the Exodus. Please like the video, comment, share this out, and whatever you do, don't forget to subscribe. This is So Ancient. Thank you for your time.